Nurture and Support begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to another week of Nurture and Support, a recommendation podcast where we share all the awesome from everywhere with all of you. I am once again Mel at Karmic9 on Twitter, and my co-host
is Kelly. Hi, everybody. It's Killing Tool at K-E-L-L. I thought you were going to say something else, but I guess not. I'm Kelly at K-E-L-L-Y-T-H-U-L on Twitter, and I'm just trying to stop being kept down by the Amazon man. That's all I'm trying to do. Your Amazon Prime Directive thing, Mel, is going swimmingly. You should be quite pleased.
Just join us. Join us.
Inevitable.
Turn over your credit card. It'll be okay. It's painless. They give you lots of stuff that for quote-unquote free that you pay for.
Just with your soul.
Yes, you do. We all must join our corporate overlords sooner or later.
That's true.
Well, I think we have, I at least have a fun recommendation, I think, this week. Kelly, how do you feel about mob movies?
I like them. I like most of them. Matter of fact, I can't think of a mob movie I didn't like. So I like them.
Okay. All right. Well, you might find this a controversial recommendation this week. Then I'll look forward to your reaction. I'm not sure if you've seen this movie. I will admit I am not the biggest fan of mob movies, so it's astonishing that I love this movie. It's The Freshman from 1990. Do you know the movie I'm referencing?
So it would seem. I have multiple levels here. One is that as you started to talk, I realized, oh, wait a second, there is one mob movie I don't like, and then I wanted to blurt it out, but then I'm like, oh my god, if that's the one she's recommending, that's going to be bad. But it's not. Married to the Mob. Never made it through it. Saw a little bit of it. I don't know if it even really qualifies as a mob movie, but no.
I agree. I disliked that movie as well.
So the time frame's good for me in terms of that, but no, I can't say that I know anything about The Freshman.
Okay. Well, most people would not consider The Freshman to be a mob movie. However, a large portion of the cast are veterans of very famous mob movies, so it qualifies. I'm going to say it qualifies as a mob movie. It is obviously a comedy. It stars Marlon Brando and Matthew Broderick.
Oh, now it's starting to come back. I've still never seen it, but at least I'm kind of getting a frame of reference.
Okay, you've got to see this movie. This is one of my actually giggle and clap at things that happen on the screen, which is disturbing on so many levels for anyone who actually is in the room with me. But Matthew Broderick plays a freshman going to film school in New York City from Vermont. And he's from a small town, and this is his first trip into the big city as a college freshman who all of us who have been there know that it's a delicate time in a person's life. So this movie, obviously, as I've said, stars Marlon Brando, who everybody knows from mob movies, and Matthew Broderick, who I don't believe ever did another mob movie. I could be wrong. Penelope Ann Miller is also in here. She plays Marlon Brando's character's daughter. Bruno Kirby.
There you go.
Yes. And I think there are a few more. Those are the major players. Marlon Brando's character is called Uncle Carmine, or Carmine Sabatini, or he's also known as Jimmy the Toucan. So essentially what happens is Clark Kellogg, that's Matthew Broderick, he arrives on the bus in New York City, and as he is looking for the subway, he is accosted by a local, not a cab driver, he drives a Cadillac, but it's Bruno Kirby, who basically scams him into giving him a ride and then drives off with all of his luggage. So Matthew Broderick, this poor little boy from Vermont, is running down the city streets of New York after this car with all of his life's belongings in it. He has been in New York City, as he tells you, for 19 minutes and 11 seconds, and his life is ruined. I just love this movie so much. It has all of the classic Matthew Broderick of that time frame voiceovers where he's telling you the story throughout the movie. He's commenting on his own story. He's done that in a number of movies from around the same time frame, and to great effect. He's very good at it. So the story goes, he's broke. He doesn't have the money to afford his books for school. A little bit about his family back in Vermont. His father died when he was young, and his mother remarried a guy named Dwight. Now, when the movie opens, Dwight and Clark are out in the woods, and Dwight has a big rifle and he's in hunting gear, and you think, oh, this kid who's in these preppy clothes, he's making him go out in the woods and hunt. No, Dwight is a big environmentalist, and he's out there shooting at hunters instead of animals, because we must protect the animals. He's a big environmentalist. He is the head of, oh, let me see, I wrote it down, the Friends of Fish and Wildlife.
And I bet one of the first Amazon Prime members, too, if I were to guess.
Quite possibly. As Clark puts it, he's very pro-mammal. So that's the family that he comes from. He's been raised by this stepfather who's very into the environment and saving all the little animals. So as things progress, he ends up seeing Bruno Kirby's character pulling a little shopping cart down the street, and he gives a very hilarious chase. He eventually catches up to him, and to pay him back for having stolen all of his things, he offers to get him a job with his Uncle Carmine that will pay $1,000 a week. And Clark's like, cool. So he tells him to meet him at this social club, which, when he walks in, is basically a scene from The Godfather, a little Italian social club that's dark and smoky with all these old Italian guys sitting around in it. And there's Marlon Brando in the back, in the shadows, in a table, mumbling in Italian. So the job turns out to be that he just needs to pick something up from the cargo area at the airport and drive it to New Jersey. And he'll get $500, and he'll do this twice a week. So, Clark's very, I'm not sure, this seems like a scam, or this seems illegal, and I don't want to do anything illegal. And, they're like, ha, 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 ha. It's not. They're not the mob. That's not, no. So the real hilarity ensues when he gets to the cargo area at the airport, and they're looking for Leo. And this very large man comes up to the fence, and he's like, I'm Big Leo. And they're like looking at their manifest, and they're like, it just says Leo. And this guy's like, I am Big Leo. We are one and the same. And the cargo turns out to be a lizard that has a cute little harness and a leash on him, and he's tied to one of the big metal shipping racks that's in the warehouse. He is a Komodo dragon, and Clark is supposed to take him to New Jersey. Luckily, Clark has brought his college roommate with him to help, and this guy is very, very preppy with perfect hair, and he doesn't like to get dirty, so having to pick up a very large lizard is not quite in his wheelhouse. But as you're going to expect, they lose the dragon on the way, and he gets loose in a mall. And they're running through the mall while the mall people are paging the owner of the reptile to please come to the information desk. I'm going to try to find that scene to put up on the blog post because it is very funny. But there's not a lot of this movie up on YouTube, actually, which is very disappointing because it's a really good, funny movie. Anybody who likes Matthew Broderick who somehow never saw this movie should really go see it. This goes much better than his other movie that involved a large reptile. I promise. So, anyway, they deliver this Komodo dragon to New Jersey, and it turns out that this whole thing is for a gourmet club where they kill endangered animals and charge lots and lots of money for people to eat them at this roaming party. He calls his mom and he tells his mom about it, and Dwight the environmentalist is listening upstairs on the extension and calls in the feds. So at that point, it becomes Clark trying to get out of trouble. Who's going to kill him first? The feds or the mob? So I'm not going to give the ending away to anybody. But it's a great movie. Marlon Brando is great in this movie. He really is.
So where would he have been in the whole Marlon scale of, you had Jor-El, in terms of there's a certain physique with Jor-El. You didn't see a lot of Marlon and Jor-El. Then you had, of course, his Sergeant Kurtz from Apocalypse Now, where he was very large and very bald in that movie. So was he packing on a lot, or
Yes.
He's big?
Yes, and he's much older than any of those movies. Apocalypse Now is much older than 1990. Yeah.
And so was this his last? Was this Brando's last movie, or?
I'm not sure. I think he had some stuff after this. Let me look real quick, because he was quite older in this one. Let's see here. Nope. The Freshman was one of his last major movies. It was, let's see, The Island of Dr. Moreau.
Oh, yes.
Came out in 96. Yeah. So I think that was his last major release. There's a few things scattered where he had appearances in here, but The Freshman was one of his last major movies. So, and it was a knockout. I'm going to tell you, it's better than Dr. Moreau. His character in this movie is great, and it's a comedy, so you don't have to worry about bad things happening. Horses getting their heads chopped off. There's none of that bad mob movie stuff in here. This is a good, fun movie with cute little Matthew Broderick back from 1990, post Ferris Bueller days, before Godzilla. So.
Yes, before the dark times before Godzilla.
Yes. Yes. I don't care what anybody says. I love Matthew Broderick, but yes, that Godzilla movie was not very good. You will very much enjoy this Komodo Dragon movie much better than the Godzilla movie. Absolutely, without a doubt. I promise all of you, if you don't laugh at this movie, you're cold and dead inside. And no Komodo dragons were actually harmed or used in the filming of this movie. The dragon, which does very much look like a young Komodo dragon, is actually played by a humongous Asian water monitor. I've never seen one as big as the dragon that they're using in this film. But he's actually being used. This is pre-CGI days, folks. They are picking up this huge lizard and running around the set with him and putting him in a car and putting him in a seatbelt. And he's hissing and roaring at them. It's great.
Oh, cool.
And I did look it up and make sure that no animals were actually harmed. There was oversight on this movie because I'm not down with the little animals getting hurt. But it's a very funny movie. And this is probably, I should say, people that actually have to spend any sort of physical proximity to me can know that sometimes I will spontaneously burst into renditions of Mona Lisa, the song. This is because of this movie. It's featured at the end at a party. They have a guy singing Mona Lisa, and it has stuck with me my entire life, and I will burst out into song with it at odd times. It's not the Nat King Cole version. The one from this movie I just love. And the same guy also screams out tequila once in a while too, and I've been known to do that as well. So, The Freshman from 1990, Marlon Brando, Matthew Broderick. It is the best mob movie ever made, so speaks Melissa. Y'all should see it.
Excellent. So fun Matthew Broderick trivia for you. So oddly enough, while I won't declare it great cinema, and you won't hear me recommending it on the show, I did not loathe that version of Godzilla as much as most people do. I didn't think it was great. I found it, and maybe it was just my mood, and I was on painkillers at the time because I had recently ruptured an Achilles tendon and come out of surgery and was somewhat bound to a couch for a while, so I had, for entertainment purposes, some folks, hey, here's this movie just came out on DVD. Maybe you'll enjoy this. You like these kind of movies, and maybe it was the drugs. I don't know, but I found it, it passed the time. I wouldn't say that I rushed back and rewatched it, but didn't have the contempt. But the trivia for you is Matthew Broderick and John Cusack were considered for a role in a television series in the last 10 years. have a guess on who that what role they might have been in the they were on the short list for?
Give me a genre.
Um, AMC. I'll give you a genre. I'll give you it's AMC original programming.
It could not possibly have been Walter White.
It was Walter White.
No. Oh my gosh.
Can you imagine Breaking Bad with with Walter White being either Matthew Broderick or John Cusack?
Bryan Cranston did such a great job with that character. I can't see anybody else possibly pulling that off. I suppose, I don't know if Matthew Broderick could. John Cusack might be able to have gotten it dark enough, but I don't know if Matthew Broderick could be dark and scary. He's so cute and lovable.
Threatening Saul Goodman, stuff like that. I think I'd have a hard time doing that.
Yeah.
So, cool. Alrighty. Hey, so it's movie night tonight on Nurture and Support, because my recommendation is also a movie, 15 years newer than Mel's, released in 2005, I'd like to point out. And the movie is called Stoned, and it is the story of Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. And I came across this one. It was on Netflix. It's available on Netflix. And I came across it, and I had, a general. I knew the workings of the Stones, and that Brian Jones was an original member, was with them, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Paint It Black, Sympathy for the Devil, during kind of when those songs were being done. He was with the band from there. I knew he was a very good musician. He played the sitar on when those were featured in some of those songs, like Paint It Black. And then he left, and they kind of moved on, or was kicked out, or whatever. But I didn't really know the backstory. So I thought, this would be kind of interesting. So I can kind of see. And then, of course, he died at the magic age of 27, which was the same age that Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin and Jimi Hendrix died at. And he was the first to start this 27 club, actually. Drowned in his pool. And then he, when he drowned in the pool, the police declared it. So I like the way the English work, because it was described as death by misadventure, was the listed as his cause of death. And I had never really heard, but apparently there was a lot of conspiracy theories around his death, and I didn't know any of that going into the movie. So I watched the movie now. It's interesting. On Netflix, it appears to be kind of user rated, or between 3 and 4 stars. IMDb, it sits in between 3 and 4 stars. Oddly enough, Rotten Tomatoes has it low. It is down like a 1.5 star thing on Rotten Tomatoes. So I don't know why. It's not a perfect movie by any stretch of the imagination, but I really found it interesting. As I kind of did a little bit of research for the show, I found out some of the criticisms were, any of these kind of quasi-documentaries, they'll compress characters and they'll do a lot of things. But apparently they played it a little bit fast and loose with a lot of the Stones' history. But the Rolling Stones wanted absolutely nothing to do with this movie whatsoever. They tend to now like their narrative to say, well, Brian Jones, who's Brian Jones? The Rolling Stones, it really is just the kind of post-Brian Jones lineup that they speak to all the time, so they don't really go into any of this time here. But it's a really intriguing show. I mean, it's not a happy movie in terms of this guy's. He starts right out of the bat that he's getting people pregnant. He's got all kinds of problems as a kid. Gets kicked out of the house. And this is accurate, he was actually the person who founded the Rolling Stones and put out the advertisements and pulled the people together. So Jagger and Richards came Brian Jones formed the band. The Stones was his band, if you will, to begin with. And he was a brilliant musician. He could play about any instrument, can play it incredibly well, but he couldn't focus enough to write. He was living life large in all aspects, whether it was women, drugs, clothing. He was just big all the way around. So he never really focused enough in terms of the writing. So there's not a lot of writing credit to him. And what's starting to happen is the Stones, like all the early bands, whether it was the Beatles or even the Who back in the day, they all started off by doing covers of R&B bands. And eventually started to realize, well, hey, we can do that and get kind of popular, but the real money is when you start writing stuff. And so that started to create some of the separation. And the Jagger and Richards were a machine. They were writing lots of stuff. Brian wasn't. And so some tensions. And then because of his lifestyle, he was missing recording gigs. When he would show up, he wouldn't necessarily be in the greatest shape. And so eventually he got dropped from the group, fired. And he died shortly thereafter. And so this movie kind of just, it's done in flashbacks, where it kind of starts off early on. He's talking to what was his manager. So, he forms the Stones, and there's a guy who's the manager who's named Tom Keelock, played by the governor, David Morrissey. Plays
Really?
Yeah, so he plays a slimy 1960s rock and roll agent, and he's a kind of a square but is kind of latched onto this as a way to make friends with the young ladies and also make money. And so he and Brian are paired up, and he basically sees Brian's problems. And so as he's trying to keep everything going, they hire a guy to come in, and whose responsibility is it was hired originally to come in and repair. So he, and this is actually true too, Brian Jones lived in, I'm going to get this right, A.A. Milne, author Winnie the Pooh.
Yes.
His estate. He purchased his estate, so he had Pooh's estate.
What a terrible thing.
So yeah, it was so. And in the movie, there's a pool and there's a Winnie the Pooh statue. I don't know if that was actually there in there, but Brian's wanting to change all these things with it and do all these things and spend money that eventually he doesn't really have because he's depleting the funds of the Stones and all that. And so he hires this guy named Frank Thorogood to come in and help. And Frank's a World War II veteran, lost an eye in the war, and is he's got a wife that the relationship doesn't appear to be exactly all that good with, and now he's spending all this time cavorting with this rock and roll guy. And there's a lot of jealousy from there. And then Brian Jones is a little bit on the mean-spirited side, and so he's kind of playing that up against there. And so it's really just kind of intriguing. It's a little loose on the facts, but close on a lot of things, because it does cover things like Anita Pallenberg, who was originally Brian Jones' girlfriend, who became Keith Richards' long-term companion, and they had children with him. And then they separated down the road. She actually left Brian because the movie depicts it that she introduced Brian to kind of a little more of the rough side of showing affection, and he took to that quite a bit. And he took to it to an extent that she was really hurt one evening, and that was, okay, I'm done with you, and this Keith Richards guy seems like a nice fellow. And so she kind of moved on with him. But so it they don't really blink in terms of they really want to kind of portray, okay, this person's really living on the edge. So it's a movie with a fair amount of nudity in it, and the nudity is not limited to the female companions of there. In fact, it was one of the largest amounts of full frontal male nudity that I've seen in any movie. So they just kind of, they're sometimes just walking around talking, and it's like, oh, okay, all right. Naked rock stars. And so it but it's a pretty intriguing story. I loved David Morrissey, and he played a great character. He nailed this kind of in it for himself guy. You kind of watch the descent, and then the whole death by misadventure at the end. And I had always just assumed he, drugs and whatever. It's fairly intriguing and I'm not going to spoil it, but at the end of the movie, and it's done kind of in a flashback sequence, so it kind of opens up early on where they're at, where Brian Jones is drowned. The police are talking to the witnesses, and they're trying to go in, and then all the way at the end, you get kind of the final play up to a version of how it happened, and it's a bit of a surprise. There's some corroboration of this version from some of the people involved, and some of it was recanted, so it's still a little suspect, but it's definitely out there, and it probably is a step closer than some of the wild conspiracy theories on, like, wow, everything got a lot better for the Stones when Brian Jones died. Jagger and Richards put a hit on him. That's unlikely the scenario, but this one here is at least plausible. So There's some interesting developments at the very end about it that kind of different to see, and then I just did some more research afterwards, and so it seems to be some mixed stories out there on how much of that's true or not, but it's pretty fascinating. It's kind of interesting to see the guys who play Richards and Jagger do not look like Richards and Jagger at all. I mean, there's some mannerisms they both pull off of, but they're not even close there. The guy who plays Brian Jones actually is pretty close, Leo Gregory, and he pretty spot on there for Brian Jones. But the other ones, you had to say, okay, so he called that guy Mick, so that's Mick, okay, and then you can eventually pick it out and those types of things.
They were probably concerned at that being another aspect of being sued over.
Yeah, because they did have, because the Stones were not happy about this production and wanted nothing to do with it because they made it very difficult. Matter of fact, they made it impossible for them to secure the rights to any Stones songs. So if you're doing a story of Brian Jones and you can't do any of the original Stones song, what they did is they went back to a lot of the cover songs that they did, and they could secure the rights to those. Right. And so they kind of work around it that way. So it's a movie about the Rolling Stones, absent very much Rolling Stones music at all. But it is a very kind of entertaining thing. It's not the happiest story. This guy's not on a good path. He did at one point. There's this kind of scene of him, dead Brian Jones, talking to Tom Keelock about, hey, you did it. You made me a martyr. And he's like, well, no, it's your fault. You were never happy. He goes, I was happy once for about a month. It was boring. And so it's just, it's just kind of an interesting thing, but kind of funny. It has some moments of that. Because they don't, like I said, they don't blink about portraying the various vices of these rock stars and the people who hang around them. But it's a pretty entertaining movie, and so I enjoyed it. I stayed riveted to it through. I thought it was just really kind of interesting to watch. And then I said some of these developments at the end. I was like, wow, I had never heard that. Could that possibly be true? And so I looked a little more. So I'm going to recommend Stoned.
All right. I have a theory.
Do you?
I do. Tigger bounced on him, bounced him into the pool.
Ah.
It's a revenge story. Or maybe he was just happy and bouncing. Or Tigger. Or Eeyore. Eeyore could have pushed him in the pool.
Yeah. Yeah, Eeyore probably would have hung out a little bit more with Frank Thorogood, I think. I think Eeyore and Frank would have been kind of mopey and together. And Brian, because Tigger didn't wear a lot of clothes either, as I recall. So no. Brian and Tigger would be right at home with each other. So
yeah,
I like the Tigger theory. That's pretty good.
I think Tigger got him. I love Tigger. I'm an Eeyore, though. All right. So I think it's time to move on to social media recommendations. This week, I hope I haven't given this one before. I should have double checked.
We have a page for that now.
I know. Actually, I didn't even, I was so sure I didn't, and then the more I've thought about it, the more I'm like, uh-oh, I hope I haven't actually done this one before. If I have, then I'm doing it again, y'all. My Twitter recommendation this week is Steve Niles, and it's at Steve Niles, Niles. Some of you, if you're into independent comics, might know him as the creator of the 30 Days of Night comic strip. He does a lot of horror comics. His Twitter bio says, writer of the horror, foul-mouthed hooligan, creator-owned, and DIY. He is the nicest guy. He's very helpful, I've seen on Twitter, of people trying to get into, they're just getting into comics or they want to get into writing their own comics. And he's been very helpful to a number of newbies that I've seen on Twitter. He also has quite a few pets. And to go with my reptile theme today, he has a very large tortoise, who I believe is an African spur-thighed tortoise, if I'm not mistaken. But his name is Gil. And Gil is the size of a large dog. And every day, Steve posts a picture of Gil. And it's called the Daily Gil. Gil is adorable. He is a huge tortoise. He likes bananas, or pretty much anything. And it makes me smile every day to see a big picture of Gil. But Steve also wrote, you don't have Chiller, Kelly, so I don't think that you watch this with us. He also wrote a book called Remains, which Chiller turned into a movie, and they released a special edition of the book for the movie. And it was good. It was really good. It is about basically the zombie apocalypse in Vegas. And at the very end, you see the evolution of a smart zombie. And I've always been disappointed that that story hasn't continued anywhere. But if you're into comics, I'm not the biggest comic person in the world. I am trying to learn more. But his I've enjoyed for quite a while. I love 30 Days of Night. He's got another one, Freaks of the Heartland, which was an independent. And he's got a new one that's just come out called October Faction, which I haven't gotten a look at yet, but I am going to. So I suggest you all follow him if you like horror comics, and I suggest you follow him just to get a picture of Gil, the giant tortoise, every day, because he's adorable, and all of you should look at him.
So did they figure out that the zombies became intelligent by they'd walk into the casino and look for two-deck blackjack versus the big wheel? That's where they place their bets. Is that how?
No, and they don't actually even figure it out. You just see it at the very end. One of the group that was holed up in the casino, which I should also mention, that movie, the main hero, quote unquote, of the movie was played by Grant Bowler from Defiance.
Oh, cool.
And
not he wasn't an Elvis impersonator, was he?
He was not. He was not. He was just kind of a life scummy card shark at the casino who basically traded drugs for sex with one of the waitresses, basically. And then the zombie apocalypse happened while they were in the supply closet. So, things happen like that. Be careful going into the supply closet. So, anyway, at the very end, one of the survivors holed up in the casino as they are escaping, climbs up and signals to the other zombies. And you get the idea that, uh-oh, this chick's got a clue. She's going to lead the zombie raiding party, and they're not going to get away. But it ended. They never made another one. So it was good. I really enjoyed I really recommend that movie for anybody that's into zombies. It was good, and it was produced by Chiller.
Oh, so. Very cool. Great. So I'm also somewhat theme oriented that I'm staying with music. In terms of some of my Twitter recommendation. Twitter recommendation is the original Space Ace, Ace Frehley on Twitter at Ace_Frehley. That's Frehley. Ace was the original lead guitarist in the band Kiss. Much like Brian Jones, he enjoyed his extracurriculars and eventually got the boot from the group. But pretty much consistently, and I was early Kiss, I enjoyed quite a bit when Ace was with him. As he left, I didn't have any interest after he was gone, and he pretty much consistently, well, he didn't write a lot of their songs. All the songs he wrote were the best songs on the albums. In fact, there was when Kiss Unmasked came out, which was before they actually unmasked, but he wrote 2 songs for that one, and the Rolling Stone review was like a 300 hitter on the worst baseball team in the world. Ace always shows up and does something good, but all the rest of the stuff is crap. And so it's always and Torpedo Girl was actually one of the songs on Unmasked and that's a great song, by the way, Torpedo Girl. Maybe a recommendation down the road. You'll get a little Ace recommendation from me. But for today, I'm just going to do social media recommendation. Follow him on Twitter. He's actually touring again. And probably my absolute favorite thing of it all is that he has named his, so Jimmy Buffett has parrot heads. Apparently the followers of the Space Ace are called Acelanders. He's like, good morning, Acelanders. Be aware, tickets for the show are on. So Acelanders is the name if you're a fan of Ace Frehley. So, and I am, so I guess I'm Kelly and I'm an Acelander.
Well, I was going to say I really never listened to any of Kiss's music, but interestingly enough, the other day we were at Walmart of all places, and the game that has the claw that you go down to pick up a stuffed toy had a whole ton of Kiss stuffed dolls in it, and I thought that was very bizarre. Why on earth would there be a bunch of Kiss stuffed plushies in this game at Walmart? I didn't understand it, but I would have to say my first introduction to Kiss was Gene Simmons playing the bad guy in that Tom Selleck movie,
Oh, there you go. Okay.
The Runaway, in
Yes.
1984. I loved that movie, and I thought he was terrifying.
Yeah, he did it. He played a good. He played an excellent bad guy in that one, so that was pretty good. That their earlier fare on that, which you can't, so if you work hard enough, you can find the Star Wars Christmas special. I know Lucas has tried to destroy every copy of it, but you can find it, and you can usually find it on YouTube for a week or two before somebody takes it down. And oh my God, that's horrific if you haven't ever watched it. But they the Kiss meets the Phantom. This was at the height of me liking Kiss. When this came out, I was like, oh, there's gonna be this Kiss movie. It's gonna be great. And I watched it. I was like, oh, I want to like this so bad, but I just can't. This is horrific. I can't. Like, this is terrible. And both Ace and Peter Criss, who was the drummer at the time, who also got the boot eventually by Mr. Stanley and Mr. Simmons, they were both impaired enough that their dialogue was dubbed for the entire movie. They had to act because they were unintelligible in the filming. So it's horrific. So so his Gene's appearance in the Tom Selleck movie, much better, better. So.
Yeah, it was amazing. I remember the big deal everybody was making about, that's Gene Simmons without his Kiss makeup on. And I was just a little kid, I remember. Of course, one has to question my parents for letting me watch that movie. But we watched it all the time.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. I mean, it was dark.
I remember it being, I don't know about any profanity in it or anything, but I do remember it being somewhat scary. The little robotic spider things were just terrifying to me, and that's probably the basis of my horror of spiders. So, robotic or otherwise.
Yeah, robotic metal spiders that shot acid. Pretty cool little creatures.
Yeah. Yeah, y'all might need to go look that movie up if it's before your time, because it was a keeper.
Yeah, and avoid Kiss Meets the Phantom. Trust me on this one.
Yes, I'm going to take that recommendation. All right, well, I think that wraps up this week. We will turn it over to Matt to tell you how to contact us with your comments or any recommendations any of you may have for us. And we'll be back next week with more awesomeness. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.
You can contact us on our website, nurtureandsupport.net, or email us at nurtandsupp@gmail.com. That's NURTANDSUPP@gmail.com. Or tweet us at nurtandsupp on Twitter.
Nurturing and supporting.